Okay, hello everyone. So we have some hard acts to follow. I am Selvaretnam, Wenya, Cheng, both of us from the business school. And we are going to talk about some group work and also internationalization. So can two nation group formations enhance cross-national interaction and learning experience? So we have seen in the last 20 years or so, the number of international students has just kept rocketing up, and we now have about 500,000 students in the UK from other countries, and that makes up about 1/5. Now, in our business school, of course, is much more than 50% international students. So, I mean, it is quite worth the time and effort that we put in to think about how we can enhance the learning experience in such an environment. So, this is what we are going to talk about. And of course, if you want literature, there is quite a lot of them out there talking about and researching into the challenges facing the academics and the students working in such an environment. There is much more than this, but I have just put a few. And also some which are thinking about the benefits surrounding such a situation. The other thing is, when we are thinking about the benefits, there is also literature and also using our own common sense, we can think about the importance that our students, when they graduate, go out into the world being comfortable and being able to exploit the whole world out there. So, basically the world should be their oyster, and as you can see, both Wenya and I have travelled thousands of miles to come and work here. And if you are going to join a multinational company, even if it is in the UK itself or in your own country, you should be able to interact with people from any part of the world when you are trying to break into new markets, or if you are trying to get into good trade deals and things like that. And of course, when we have already thought about the challenges facing group work and the fact that students do not necessarily like group work, and on top of that we have a very diverse student population here. And we find that usually our students tend to gravitate towards their own kind or their own countrymen. There are many reasons that why it might happen, because we want to stick to a comfortable, to be in a comfort zone, so that you speak the same language, or even if you speak in English, you have the same sort of accent, you might say the same sort of things, and also your interests might be quite different. So, when I came to the UK as an international student, I was not at all interested in football, but I learned quite quickly that if I wanted to make conversation with people, I need to know something about what is going on. So, I actually had to invest a bit of time following the news and knowing the names of the clubs and things like that. So, this is also a learning process for students to try and sort of increase their graduate attributes in this sphere. So, we as academics, can we do something to facilitate more cross-national interaction is what we were thinking about, and we have been brave enough, especially Wenya, to try and do this intervention in a class in economics.
Okay. So, I am going to provide you some background about our project. So, we try to investigate a student experience of working in a multinational project group in one of my course last semester. So, the course is Economics of Poverty, Discrimination and Development, and it's an optional course for honors student. So, we have 48 students enrolled in this course. So, the intervention was done in one of the in-course assessment where students are required to do a group work, which accounts for 30% of the total grade. So the students have to form groups to write a proposal of a pilot poverty alleviation project. So in the very first lecture, I have told students the rules of group formation. So each group should consist of 4 students and at least 2 nationalities, right? So ideally, when Geetha and I started this project, we would like to have, 2 by 2 groups, so 2 members from each nationality. But as you know, because of various reasons and various constraints, we weren't able to get our ideal group size and ideal student mix. So we will show you in the next few slides the actual student mix is, we have a lot more variation in the student mix. Okay, so I'll show you the timeline. So in week 1, the students got the topic of assignment and they know the rules of group. So we only mentioned that we need 4 members in each group and at least 2 nationalities. We didn't do a random allocation of students in groups because we know that students dislike this idea a lot. So we want to allow them to have some flexibility in choosing their own group mates, at the same time having some team diversity, right? So we try to make the rules as simple as possible. So the students have to sign up for a group by week 3, and on the first day of week 4, the groups were finalized, and then the students have to submit their assignment in week 11. So we try to make sure that they have as much time to interact as possible. Okay. So as I said, there are 48 students in our class. 29 are males and 19 are females. So you can see the list of countries, nationalities. So the nationalities were actually assigned according to how the students identify themselves. So we have students, for example, they are actually British Pakistan, but they identify themselves from Pakistan. Or, in the student record, we have students from the UK, but apparently the Scottish would claim that they have a different nationality from the rest of the UK, right? So you can see the pie chart. So 1/4 of the students are Scottish, 12% from the rest of UK. We have a really large number of students from the EU, and also some from the non-EU countries. So apparently, some of these non-EU students are from India, South Africa, so on and so forth. So one thing I would like to highlight is that apparently the students in my class is not representative, because we know that in the business school we have a large number of Chinese students, but no Chinese student enrolled in my course. So yeah, so this is one thing I would like to that you may have to bear in mind when you look at our results. Okay, so 48 students, so we have 12 groups in total, so this is the actual student mix we have in the end. So what you can see is that there is lots of variation in the degree of team diversity. So, so there is, like, group 12 is probably the group that is closest to our ideal nationality mix. So we have 2 students from the UK and 2 students from the Netherlands. Okay, so for other groups, you will see that many groups have at least 3 nationalities, and also for some groups, while they have 2 nationalities, but they have a dominant nation. For example, you can see group 5, group 6, group 9 and group 10, so on and so forth. So we have a lot of variation in the degree of team diversity in our group project. Okay.
So I'll also add, well, what has happened? Okay, the reason why we thought of 2 by 2 is to make sure that if we have 2 and 1 and 1, some students might feel a little bit alone, so you have a partner. So maybe more diversity is better than what we ourselves envisaged, but that was the thinking behind it.
Okay, so part of the group assessment is that we ask students to fill out a survey by week 10. So the survey is about their experience working in such a group. So we didn't want to provide the survey very early, because we were afraid that students' behavior may change after they look at the survey questions. So 42 out of 48 students agreed to be part of the research, and we analyzed their answers. So they are required to answer 5 questions, and Geetha will present you the results of the surveys in the next few slides.
Okay. So, all the students were asked to give in the survey, but as you can see, only 42 agreed to be part of the research. So, the results are reflecting that. So, question 1 asked them, other than about this particular assessment, what are the other topics you talked about with your group mates? And students came up with many such topics that they might have talked about, and we have ordered it according to the highest number. So, as you can see, many students did talk about the differences in their culture, their own countries, maybe the language and things like that, and some also talked about religious differences. And as you can see, one quote says, beautiful places in the home countries, cultural differences when it comes to sex, drinking or partying and things like that. So, young people talking about these things. The other thing that was quite interesting for students to talk about, because they are students in the university and this is an honors course. So, they are obviously very interested in the degree program itself. So, they are talking a lot about other courses, what other optional courses are you taking and things like that. And some students, so this is an optional honors course. So, there were 3rd year students and 4th year students. So, they were also giving each other some advice about, okay, next year you can take this course because it is very good, or please do not take this course, it is terrible, and things like that going on. And also I was not that very surprised, the economics students, I would expect them to talk a lot about current affairs and politics, but not enough. 13 students have said that. About 10 students have said they talked about hobbies and interests, but nobody really mentioned any sports by name. So, I do not know whether it falls into this category or not, but I was a little bit surprised about that. Then students were saying, well, leisure activities and what they do in the evenings, I am going out for these films and things like that. So, they are talking about what they are doing in their spare times. Now, continuing that, other than the degree and the courses itself, the students are talking about university life in general. So, we decided to categorize it separately, because there were quite a few students who have said that. And in this particular course, we had quite a few visiting students, 9? Yeah, so there were about 9 visiting students, and we know that sometimes our own Glasgow students might have gone abroad and come back. So, they had a lot of knowledge about what degree programs look like in other universities. So, students are talking about these differences quite a bit. So, this is when I am also thinking, as academics, this is a resource available for us to actually talk to students and find out more about how our degree program compares with others and things. Now, experience internships, what would you like to do in the future and things like that, not that many people, they have not talked too much about that, which was a bit surprising. Then I have also categorized a few others which had only few comments, but anyway interesting. Dissertation specifically mentioned by 3 students, although it is part of the degree program. Then 4 students talking about light-hearted discussions about their relationships and things like that. So, they are having a bit of fun anyway, doing Wenya's project. So, question 2, what extent do you agree with the statement working in a group with different nationalities improved the quality of my work? Now, it is not as though that many people say yes, strongly agree, but to an extent some of them are saying yes, it did improve a bit. But most of the students say, well, it did not really make much of a difference, because the quality of the work. So, what we were happy about is nobody said, oh, it has really dragged down my mark, which would have been a bit problematic for us, but mostly they are indifferent. And the comments also point to that. So, they are saying they had other positive experiences by working in such a group. However, the outcome of this particular project itself was not affected too much. And then we also asked them to explain why they are saying this, particularly asking them to talk about the benefits and challenges that they faced working in such a diverse group. So, that was what they were thinking about. So, some of the interesting things is most of the students did say we could get different points of view from different students, especially since they are from different backgrounds. Meeting new people, so this enabled them to meet people and interact more with them, more than what they might have done already. So, that was quite a nice thing to know. Then they say, well, people had different approaches to how to get on with the project, and also innovative solutions. So, as you can see, one student has said, our group project focused on a region in Africa. Having an individual in our group who had lived in Africa helped us to understand some of the realities of our project idea. So, students might have more of an experience that they can bring to the table, and also this course was particularly about poverty and development. Different views about issues other than this project. So, that also they have brought, they have talked about. Some students who might not be native English speakers, I think, have said that the benefit was, the group members had a better grasp of the language. So, that improved and benefited the group project on the whole. Challenges, this is key. The main thing that people were talking about is difference in work ethic and aspiration. So, these are honors students, so some of them might be working towards a first class degree, while the group member might not be doing so. So, this is not because of national diversity as such, it could be differences in what the students is aspiring to. And also work ethic, when it comes to that, some people say, oh, some students can be quite laid back, whereas the others are all geared up to go. So, this was a problem for them. So, as you can see, this student has said language barrier was not an issue, but working moral and ambition was different. More effort. So, the other thing is, since this is a new group formation, they are saying that they needed to invest more time in getting to know each other, how each other works and things like that, which is true. So, we as academics have to remember this when we are putting students into groups, that will the forming stage of the group will take some time. So, if we give a group project and say give it in 2 weeks, it might have its own challenges. Fixing meetings is more difficult, which we already talked about. So, this is mirroring what the problems already talked about in the second talk. Question 3, would you consider the experience to be different from what might have been if you had chosen your own group members? Now, as you can see, 3 students are saying very different, 19 students are saying no difference at all, and 20 are saying slightly different. So, I mean, when we thought of questions also, we are now thinking maybe we could have framed it a little bit differently, but this is the first time we were doing it. So, it came out like this. So, most of the students are saying, well, it is not that different because I might also have done the same thing. So, I will move on to the next question. So, this is the key part of our questionnaire really, because we wanted to understand what do the students think as to whether the academics ourselves whether we should intervene, the academics or the university, should we intervene to facilitate more cross-national interaction. So, what are your thoughts, especially after this experience? And we were pleasantly surprised that there was more of a positive answer to that. So, as you can see, more than 50%, 57% of the students here are saying agree or strongly agree, and of course, 14 students are saying well, we do not know really, we are indifferent. Now, even the students, 4 students who have disagreed to this statement actually come up with suggestions as to how we might intervene. So, this was a bit surprising. They say no need to intervene, we disagree with this statement, but the answer to that is that, well, first of all, do not do the intervention in a summative assessment. So, that is one thing, and also students are saying do it in the first 2 years rather than in the honors years, where it will affect our degree outcome. And so, one student is suggesting that we do it in seminars and tutorials rather than in an assessment itself. And then one student, I think from the way the student had answered, it is obvious that the student is a visiting student who thought that only they did not know people, but everyone else seemed to know each other very well. So, they said, well, at the beginning itself, if you allow us to introduce ourselves and get to know each other better, it would be useful. And then finally, we asked them, can you make some suggestions as to how we might intervene, which will be useful to the students. And students came up with some answers to that, which I will put up. So, already we talked about the 4 that the students who disagreed came up with. Now, this I would take this with a pinch of salt. Most of the students, so 8 students have said, well, if you want to intervene, you do random allocation and the teachers can allocate them cross-nationally. Now, with experience myself, I probably may not do that because then a student, especially if it is a summative assessment, because it creates a lot of trouble. But what we did like is, now this course, now Wenya got a lot of positive evaluation. So, like the best teacher and all that, and I did not see any negative comment at all after going through this group assessment, which did make up 30% of their grade. And one of the reasons I think is that we gave the constraint, there should be at least 2 nationalities, and then you choose your own people. So, that I think went down well. And 7 students have said this itself was a good intervention, which you can carry on doing. And quite a few students have suggested that we can do small group discussions and things like that in lectures and tutorials and things like that, which will promote more interaction. And as already mentioned, time up. So, so students to introduce themselves better, and a few students have already said that we should think about gendered male female mix and not only nationality. And as you can see, buddy system and social events, things that go on outside the class itself, classroom itself, has been suggested by quite a few students. Okay, so did not we start late? Okay, so I will shut up and any questions? And